All right, folks. Coach Patrick here, Endurance Nation, with our race execution bootcamp. Thank you for your patience. Um, while every race definitely starts on time, maybe the Endurance Nation race, not so much. Just going through some technical setup so we can make sure that we have everything ready for you here as we go through this process. So thank you to everyone who's joining today. Very exciting to be able to bring this out live to the endurance community. I'll be walking you through a set of slides for today so you get a sense of how we operate as a community inside Endurance Nation and how that advantages you, the athlete. Our focus here primarily will be on race execution, although we do coaching and camps and many other pieces. One of the unique elements about Endurance Nation is that we have this race execution mindset. It's a framework that we bring to the table. It's something that we use so that all of our athletes, regardless of their ability, can create conditions for their personal success. A great race isn't just about beating a certain time or being first in your age group. It's about racing to your potential. And so everything that we talk about today really is within the context of saying, hey, how can we be the best that you can be on race day, right? What are the conditions we can set up? And so just so those of you who know, who are watching on Facebook or watching on YouTube, you can use the comments feature, you can chat. We'll see them pop up here inside the chat as well. And I'll do my best to answer them and check in on them as we go, okay? So you can definitely go crazy there. So I'm going to introduce just real fast my co-host for today, Matt, Super Matt. Matt, how you doing? Oh no, you just muted yourself. You're on the inverse.
That's it. It's good to be here. I'm unmuted. That sounds good. I'm happy to be here.
Outstanding. Welcome. Matt is my co-conspirator on the Dude Guy podcast and is a huge asset to the team behind the scenes in terms of helping people think about the races, process, race performance, and so on. So Matt is going to be the good cop today as we go through this presentation and do some talking. So thanks for joining. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and put up these slides for you so we can see them. Bear with me. All right, here we are with our presentation for today, so you can see it. All right, everything you need to know. There's the team, obviously red being the fastest color. This is us at Ironman Lake Placid in 2017, I believe. It's pretty awesome. All right. There we go. And Matt, if you can make sure that I'm still muted there, that would be awesome. All right, so here we are. I'm going to come back here and just... I can hear the lag inside my ears, which is driving me crazy. All right, I'm changing over my audio to my ears. See if that makes any difference. All right. Okay, so with that said, here we are. And Matt, if you have the other tabs open, you can go ahead and close those other tabs now because we're good and we're live. All right, so myself and Matt, obviously we look a lot better in black and white for sure. No doubt whatsoever. And just kind of a sense, my background's primarily triathlon. Matt is sort of adventure racing. He's done a little bit of everything, phenomenal runner, but pretty much good at anything he puts his mind to. But his superpower is just being mindful and helping people figure out solutions for themselves, which is a part of how we operate inside Endurance Nation. So we've been doing this since 2007. We've been doing this talk, the Four Keys talk, for just about as long. These are me in various different age stages and formalities as well, from being outside at races to also just being sort of presenting and being live here inside theaters and so on. So this talk that you're hearing today has been produced for years across the board. We put it into a DVD format. It's just a great resource for everyone, and it's something that we ask our athletes to go through every single year as they proceed through their season. Okay, we're definitely going to give you some information at the end. If you want to come out and check us out, you can go to endurancenation.us/join. and apply. We've got our out-season program, which starts on October 29th, which is kind of the deadline for signing up if you want to join us for our winter training program, which is a ton of fun. So stay tuned for that as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out the resources as well. And I will share those with you right now so you can just see those very quickly, because I want you to know that we do have all these other things that are going to be coming your way. And I'll put those up right here. Just so you know, we've got our race mistakes PDF for you to be able to share with some of your friends so they know, but also we've got a 16-page race execution PDF here with all the pieces that we're going to be talking about today. It gives you all the information you need to put this into practice with your own training and racing. We've got some information about our courses that you'll be able to access later and get a discount to go ahead and access those, 50% off if you want to do a deeper dive on some of our courses. We've got our sponsors for the event today, from Juice Performer to Lever Movement to Hyperice, Rudy Project, and so on, to Zelios and Casa as well. All of them are coming together for us to help us be a part of bringing this to you. So that's definitely what we want to have happen. Okay, which is fantastic. All right, very well. So with that said, here we go. 1 second. All right, so just bear with me here. And last but not least, we have a great video and introductory for you on Ty Hall, who is the dream chaser for the Legacy Foundation at Leadville. Met him this year, and the sort of structure they have for the Legacy Foundation is actually really powerful. It's an opportunity to raise money and bring additional attention to what's happening inside the Leadville community as the race itself was designed. And Ty actually races from the back every year, and every person that he passes en route to his finish, he raises more money, and so people can donate $1 for every person he passes, or so on. He's raised 6 figures worth of money, and it's a unique take on race execution as a fundraising strategy, but also a different perspective than what we will be talking about today. And it may resonate with many of you who are either off-road, know Leadville as well, or are relatively aggressive and use sort of atypical methods for getting yourself from the start line to the finish line. Okay, so something for you to be thinking about as you go through the process. All of this will be sent to you after this session, so you'll get an email with a link where you can go ahead and download and access all of these resources at your leisure. So don't sweat it, but I want to make sure that you have that information so you do know. Okay. All right, so let's go back to our presentation for today. Outstanding. I talked about the sponsors already. And just a reminder, if you haven't signed up, if you've just dropped by, you have to go to enduranceStation.us/bootcamp here and just enter your email address. That's how we know who we're sending it to, and you'll get that link. If you haven't signed up for it, we can't send it to you. So please go ahead and do that. And once again, thanks to our sponsors here today for helping us out. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So our 4 keys framework, and this is really critical. We'll dive into this right now. Is that what we want you to be thinking about as you go through this process is how you normally race, what your race experiences look like, and then the ideal conditions for you to race. And odds are you've had both good races and bad races, or good moments within bad races, or bad moments within good races. Our goal here is to expand the amount of good racing that you have by giving you a framework that you can use to be successful. Okay. And so the framework ideally is essentially your operating system for how you're going to race. All right. All right. And here I'm going to add you to the screen too, so you can feel free to interject and talk as we go. So basically 99% of people don't know how to race. We call it workout hero, racing zero. Matt, those are your words. Essentially, people show up to race day with a training mindset, right? You're trying to maximize your work. You're trying to get the biggest return on investment from your session. And in the training world, you're really dialed in and making sure that you don't have any problems. Your setup is perfect. Everything is ready, the right gear. We're all good. And you get opportunities every day, or sometimes multiple times a day, depending on the weekend, to put this into practice, which is great. Like, you're really good at training. We have to be really good at training to build our fitness. The problem is that there's really no connect to what we have on the racing side. Racing and the race experience is not like training. We don't get do-overs on race day. This is it. You got to shoot your shot. You don't get a chance to to hop off your bike and hit pause and go do something. The clock is ticking the entire time the race is going. You can't just count on standing on the side of the road and waiting for a nice person to come wandering by and offer you assistance. In many cases, you can't accept assistance from outside the race. You can only use what's on the course. You can only have what you've brought with you. And this is a very different experience. So when people tell you race day is really just a long catered training day, that couldn't be further from the truth. That's something that you tell yourself. It's a nice little lie that you tell yourself so that today doesn't seem so crazy, special, and full of pressure, but it totally is. And it's meant to be. That's why you signed up, which is have an opportunity to test yourself against the best on that day on this course. And you need to be ready to embrace that challenge. So part of that is understanding that we are racing and that most of the people around you don't know how to race. So when we as athletes tend to sort of mimic others or follow in the lead of others, you oftentimes on race day are setting yourself up for a bad decision and for a bad outcome simply because you're not following your rules, you're not following your framework, you're just following someone else's default set of choices. And you really need to have a good sense of where and where you don't want to be, right? Hope is not a course of action. Matt, this was your tidbit. You want to give some audio to this point?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, watching a lot of races, you just see all kinds of crazy stuff at the beginning of some of these races, right? So, and a lot of them folks are making decisions based on either ego or a preconceived notion that they have to maintain X watts for Y time or, miles per hour, and irregardless of, what the weather conditions are or something like that. So I think that goes back to some of the, the decision making that you're talking about. For the hope is not a course of action is you only get a couple times to race throughout the year, right? If you're going to race Ironman, there's only so many Ironmans that you can prepare for and execute in a year. And same thing goes for any kind of extensive endurance event, right? You only get a couple chances to pull the trigger through the year. And sometimes folks just train a lot and then just hope for the best on race day. I'm just going to, build a ton of fitness and I'm just going to hope that I can do the things that I want to do. And I think throughout the seminar here, we'll kind of show you that really hope is really not the best course of action going into race day. It's like how you prepare for it, and driving that fitness around the race course is, you can really take charge of your race rather than just hope I'm going to have a good day, that you'll really have much better skill going into the race of being able to execute the fitness that you do have. So yeah, hope is not a course of action.
Totally. And I would follow that up with what we say inside the team, which is good skill. Shout out to Tim Kronk, one of our original members on the team, and not good luck. Most of the things that you'll be encountering on race day are known. You may not be ready for them, but you know where the hills are, you know what the weather's likely to be, you know what your fitness relatively is. It's all elements that we are aware of and that we have at our disposal. Racing is about taking those elements and putting them together in a way that accounts for the challenges that rise up on race day and allows you to still be successful in spite of those challenges. And that's a skill mindset, and that's a skill activity, which is why when athletes race, say the same event, say you do a century ride 3 or 4 times during the course of a year. By the time you get to the 4th one, you've got a really good sense of what works, what doesn't work, how you want to pace it, what equipment you want to have, what you want on your bike, what you want to be wearing, what your strategy may be, etc. Because it's evolved over the course of the year. Ideally, what we get to do is then take some of those elements and codify, right? Put it into a plan, a tool that you get to use on your day, which is so important. So remember, don't follow other people on race day. Just because they're doing something doesn't mean that you should also be doing it. You want to show up to race day with your plan in place, with your framework in place, so you're ready to go. And you have guidelines, guide rails in some cases, to make sure that you stay on track so that no matter what happens, you know what to do. When we talk about being able to handle the pressure, being able to do well when the pressure is on, we think about people who are calm, they're composed, they can take action, they know what they need to do. These people don't have supernatural abilities. They are just very focused on the things that they need to do, and they're not distracted. So it becomes less of an emotional conversation. It's much more practical. What's the step I need to take? An example would be athlete A, no framework, no bearing, gets a flat tire on race day, and basically like loses their mind. Now they're really upset. They're totally taken out of the day. They're watching other people ride away. They don't know what to do. They're not even sure if they have all the tools because they didn't think about it before the race on their bike to fix their flat tire. And then they've got to go through the process of doing it. The whole time they're thinking about what they're missing out on. They're not thinking about the task at hand. Contrast that with someone else who gets a flat tire, who says, oh, my rear tire's flat. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm actually going to eat something because I'm going to have some calories going into my system while I'm fixing this flat. So they take a gel or they take a bar, they pull over. As they're pulling over, they're shifting into the right gear so they know they can easily get their wheel off. They pop that wheel off, get the toolkit out, do the change they need to do and get back to work. Or in the case of tubular, just put the plug in there and reinflate and get back to work. And they're actually advantaged. This has been a rest opportunity, a chance for them to reset their mind and get back to work, and not an exercise in panic. Same situation that happened to both athletes, but two very different approaches. And our job today, and in general with Endurance Nation and our frameworks, is to get you to that second mindset. Right. So the cold hard truth. Here you go. Yep, race day doesn't care. So people will finish the race and you'll often see it afterwards. People say, but this thing happened to me, or like I was going to do this, or sometimes you'll see in an Ironman, you'll see people walking side by side on the run, talking about their great bike. At the end of the day, race day doesn't care. It's all about what can you do on the day to get from point A to point B. So if you've forgotten to charge your devices, if you left your nutrition at home, if you don't know the course yourself, if you just went crazy and did all the wrong pacing at the wrong time, or ignored the conditions on the day and just sort of hard-headedly charged ahead, you're going to pay the consequences for that. There's a plus and a minus. And in shorter races, 5Ks, 2K on the erg, sprint triathlons, for example, all of those things, you can kind of go all out and, you might make it to the finish line. That could work. But when we start talking about endurance racing, we say this is going to be a 6, 8, 10, 12, 18, 24-hour day. Speed isn't as much about staying fast, it's about slowing down less than the competition. And good decisions help you slow down less. They help you adapt and evolve to your environment, which is why we're here. So understand that race day doesn't care whatsoever about what you've done, doesn't care about your best bike that you've done coming in here, doesn't care about how skinny you are, doesn't care about like how much you really want to see the finish line or what you've planned for after the race. It's all about what you're doing inside the moment. So the goal with the 4 keys, and you can see the symbols here on your screen, is to keep you focused on the moment, and using this framework as a series of making decisions on race day, right? So rather than getting caught up in everything else, these are your guiding principles we're going to help you on the day, okay? And if you do have comments or questions, again, leave them in the chat. We'll be happy to kind of answer them as they come up. So the first key is the X. Race day is about execution, not fitness. Now, this is a big one. As we talked about earlier, you build all this fitness, you've built this engine, you're ready to get out there and just show it off, right? I know I can run a sub 3-hour marathon, or I know I can do this 100-mile TT in under 4 hours and 15 minutes. I'm just committed to this. I'm gonna go out there and just go as hard as I can for as long as I can and be really great. Again, that's that training mindset creeping into the race environment. And so part of what we do inside Endurance Nation in those last 12 weeks is transition from baseline preparation and building fitness to building a race machine. And part of that race machine exercise is understanding that racing is about driving your fitness around the course. It's about using your fitness as a resource, as an asset to get you from one place to another, from the start back to the finish line, in a position of strength, in a position where you've used everything at your disposal to get there as fast as you can, and that your personal finish line happens right after the actual finish line. Right? We've all had the opposite happen. We've broken down 5 miles out, 10 miles out, 20 miles out, 30 miles out from the finish line because of poor choices, poor decisions, or just mistakes or misfortune. And our goal is to re-engineer that by putting efforts, by saying to you right now, it's about execution, not fitness. So if you're in a situation where there's 2 people kind of charging up a hill, you want to beat that person with your brain, not with your legs and your lungs. You're going to need your legs and your lungs later in the day, and not to win this random hill in the middle of an event that doesn't really matter. That becomes an ego-driven situation, as Matt said earlier. Now, the other piece we want you to think about is that the race is just too long, right? It's just too long to solve with fitness alone. So if you've got an 18-hour day or a 12-hour day, you have fitness, but you've got to also deal with fueling. You've got to deal with changing conditions. You have to make sure you're managing your gear. You're going to have to adapt your pace based off of how you feel, how you're evolving fitness-wise, RPE-wise, nutrition-wise across the course of the day. All of that requires really strong mental engagement and quality decisions and really rapid decision making, right? Lots of small decisions so we can encounter a problem, analyze it, make a decision, see the results, and move forward, or go back to the decision loop and say, I want to make another decision, another chance, etc. But we're constantly in that mindset as we go through this process. And you can see it because you've seen it on race day, whether you've been to an Ironman or you've seen bike rides, or you've been to long distance events like mountain biking or longer gravel races. You will pass people in the last quarter or last third of the race that otherwise you would think should be at the front. You're like, that person should have won my age group or should be in the top 10 today. They're just amazingly fit. They're super strong, but there's no guarantee that super strong is going to be super fast on race day. Really being the smartest that you can be in terms of delegating your effort makes a really big difference. My athletic career has been a lot like the tortoise and the hare, where I'm the tortoise, and other people, I just can outlast them on the course just enough to get in front of them by the finish line. It doesn't matter if that happens 1 mile before or half a mile or just 100 meters. If you cross the line first, you're faster than that person, and it just may look like two different experiences. So you've seen what happens when people don't make execution-based decisions. So all day long, as you're looking around you at all these fit people, all the fit people who've shown up at registration, the fit people who are there during race week, maybe your teammates who are also super fit, and you're comparing my fitness versus your fitness, my heart rate versus your heart rate, my bike versus your bike. All of those things are just objective elements of your race. It's how you put them together that matters. So don't worry about whether or not you have the most expensive bike or if you're able to lose those 5 pounds or not. It's race day. We're here. Like, you have to do the best with what you have, and it all comes down to execution. Okay. Any comments on that, Matt?
Yeah, I think the last thing that I'd just like to add on this one is that one of the reasons I really like this rule is that if your training does not go perfectly, everybody wants to have the perfect training schedule where you turn all your workouts green, you hit all of your numbers, all the lines go in the right directions, you're super happy with them and emotionally connected to all that. But sometimes, life gets involved and your training does not go the way you want to. For whatever reason, you have to travel or work or family or your other priorities in your life get in the way of your priority for your race. You come to that race with a set fitness. It's going to be whatever it's going to be on that day. So I think when you bring this mindset to racing, it's really about how do I get the most out of what I did? And I really like that approach, just because it's not you against your ideal. It's not you against some, what you want to be or could be. It's, what fitness do I have when I walk onto when I walk out to the swim this morning, or get on the bike this morning, or line up in my corral for the run. And then how can I make the best decisions to get the most out of what I have on that day, given I'm racing in the rain, I'm racing with the wind. I didn't want this thunderstorm to show up during the middle of my bike, but it is here now. So just getting the most out of your fitness that you have on the day in those conditions.
100%. All right, awesome. Look at those sexy bees, by the way. Ironman Coeur d'Alene. This is some legends there on the team. All right, the second of our 4 keys: nothing matters until the line. So we have race days about execution, not fitness. The second one is nothing matters until the line. And what really this does is it allows you to understand that our decision-making framework is all built around getting you to a place on your race where it gets real, right? Where things really make a difference. So we often create plans that say, mile 1, I'm going to do this, and mile 5, I'm going to do that, and mile 7, I'm going to do this. And you've taken a 26.2 mile race and broken it down into like 17 different decision points or components. That's all well and good, but that's really hard to execute on the day. The minute that we get into zone 2 and start moving at a decent effort, like just borderline conversational, or maybe that's just our relationship right now. I'm not sure what it is, but let's just say borderline conversational right now. When we get to that point, all of a sudden our mental capacity diminishes greatly. Like, we lose 50 IQ points right away. So your 17-step plan to a great marathon sounds great, but unless you're like an NFL quarterback with all of that written out on a huge piece of plastic and a coach in your ear, probably not going to be the best. So we step back and say, all right, your race day essentially boils down to all the work that you're doing to get you to the place where it gets real. And then what do we do to the finish, right? people often say that the marathon is 26 miles, or sorry, 20 miles of hope and 6 miles of reality. And that really captures the spirit of what we're talking about here. So whether you've done triathlons or long distance rides, whether they're TTs or cross country events, whether they're competitive or just on your own as your own sort of type of event, there's parts of your day, your experience, your event that are easy and things are just in a state of flow and you're moving and everything is great. Then there's a part of time where things get really hard. It could be darkness, it could be fatigue, it could be blood sugar, it could be the heat. Who knows what may be in the instance that's setting it up for you? But really, all we're trying to do at that point is make sure that we get from that point to the finish line in the best shape possible. And what most people think about is, oh, I need to be, stronger in this last period. I need to be tougher. I need more resilience, to kind of get there because it got hard and I backed off. The reality of it is that really puts a lot of pressure on you and on the unknown. You don't often get into that place in the course of a year. If you do, you may need some more rest and recovery inside your program. Rather, we spend the majority of our time in the other 90% of your day. And what we can do is make better decisions in this area that reduce the cost of that hard time, or rather position you more strategically to be optimally effective, even though it does get hard. I'm not saying that race execution eliminates the pain and discomfort of racing fast. That's not true at all. Racing is difficult, and the faster you want to go, the harder it's going to be, right? Just without a doubt. We just move the slider, it goes in the same direction. The question becomes, how well positioned can you be for when things get really, really hard? Okay, so we think about what are all the things we're doing till we get to the line, and then when we get to the line, what do we do when we don't want to slow down, right? And because the slowing down happens at the line, right? And so in success, not slowing down. I'll give you an example. My last Ironman was at Ironman Arizona 2019. And I knew when I was looking at the run course that things were going to get hard for me out there on the run course. I've been pushing myself all day. It was going to be relatively cooler temps, and Arizona is, for the most part, flat except for one portion of the run course. And so it's 2 loops. And so I was like, oh, where are things going to get real? So I made 2 decisions on the day that helped me be successful on the run. I think I went 3:18 maybe on the run. Not super fast, but for me, it was my second fastest Ironman run ever. And the 2 things I did was, one, I used all my nutrition and didn't stop at the aid station. So I eliminated the places where I stopped at the aid stations because I wanted to fuel and keep moving, and the aid stations are tempting, right? So I was like, I'm going to make a strategic decision not to stop at aid stations, but I'll stop where I want to stop. So I picked places on the course where I could walk, but they weren't great places to stop. They're in the middle of nowhere. I'm underneath an overpass. Like, it wasn't very exciting. There was no reason to kind of stand around. And if I felt good, I should just keep running, right? So I made a decision there to be strategic. But the other part, more germane to this conversation, is that I knew things were going to get hard the second time we climbed a hill and went back in. And I knew that was going to be the place where I had to do the work. But I wasn't worried about it because I also was aware that you've got that magnetic pull from the finish line. So I knew the hill was about 4 miles out, but I also knew that last mile to the finish was going to be just me floating on a cloud, trying to get it done, being pulled to the finish line. I could hear the announcers at that point in time. I would know I would hear the crowd. I'd be really amped up for that. So I really had to deal with 3 miles of what I was going to do in this period where things get hard inside that space. And so everything I'd done on the marathon to that point was getting me to a place where I knew I could really be effective in those critical 3 miles. And that was my line, the climb up, finding someone else around me who was running that I could also make into a small competition to keep myself going so I could be in front of that person, which would help me stay on the gas, right? So all of those decisions set me up to be successful. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't done the work ahead of time to be really disciplined and to also know from my experience and from the terrain of the course what was going to be the line for me on the day. All right. Race inside your box. All right. I picked a picture from Leadville for this one, Matt, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what it means when we say race inside a box. How do we get to the line, right? If it's execution, not fitness, and then we know nothing matters until the line, it doesn't mean we don't do anything or we're being reckless. How does the box help us get to the line on race day?
Yeah, so I really like how these 3 fit together. So for racing inside the box, and is really all about your decision making based on where on the line and how you're executing your fitness. So just like in your Ironman Arizona story, you knew where it's going to get real for you, right? So you knew where your line is going to happen. So then you start making all of your decisions, which is staying inside your box, based on how you're driving your fitness around the day. So that's how those 3 things kind of tie together, right? So you figure out where it's going to get really real for you. Mm-hmm. And then you make your decisions staying in your box about how you're going to execute your limited amount of fitness across the entire day. And Ironman is a great place for this, is, you know, and almost any endurance event. But when you get to watch one, I think why you choose the aid station is that I got to crew for folks at the Leadville stage race. And just like at Ironman, you'll see all kinds of people using all kinds of strategies. And there's just a lot of distractions early in the race when there's a high density of people around you, of like, look at that person, look at that. Why is that person eating that stuff? Oh my gosh, that guy's eating a donut on the bike. That guy has iPods, earphones in. You know, what is he listening to? Why is he listening to music? Why do I need to listen to music? Oh my gosh, that bike costs $15,000. There's just 1,000 distractions that draw you away from executing your race and making decisions that set you up for the line. And staying inside your box is all about making decisions that make sense for you based on your race plan and how you set yourself up for where your line is at. And you stay on your hydration plan that you know has worked, that you have practiced. So it's all about making decisions. You do you, basically, for to set you up for where it's going to get real for you, and then you get the most out of your fitness.
Yes, totally. And I think another way to phrase that, which is really well put, is what do you control, right? So what are the knobs and levers that you have inside your domain that you can adjust? So when you're climbing a hill and somebody goes by you just super fast, like, you know, superhuman fast, you can try and respond to that, even though those are not your numbers that you want to be following. You could be, you know, sort of preoccupied with that, like, oh my God, that person, like, I shouldn't have had all those bowls of ice cream that I had, or I really wish I was lighter, or whatever. And when you are externally oriented on other people or other conditions, or, oh, look, a bear, or like, oh my goodness, like this road surface isn't so great. If you're focused on those elements of your day and kind of zooming in on them, which is natural when you're in an endurance event and there's not a lot going on, and there's, you know, some energy or disruption or challenge to your status quo, it's natural to kind of get fixated on that. But we have to avoid that, right? There's a time later on, and we'll talk about in a second, when you do want to use the competition, as I mentioned in my Arizona example, as a tool to drive yourself forward. But there's a time and a place for that, right? And we don't want it all through the race. So the way that we get from the start line to the place where there is the line, where things get real for you on the day, is by staying inside your box. And that's knowing, you know, what your pace numbers need to be, practicing your nutrition, having a plan for your day. All of this, we're going to basically explodify it for you in a minute in the second half of this presentation, when we talk a little bit about how we use different components to prepare you through your training inside Endurance Nation, components that we'll be sending to you via email. For those of you who go to endurancenation.us/bootcamp, enter your email address there. We'll be sending all of that out to you. Okay. All right. So the last of the 4 keys here, the last but the most. Hey, that's Tim Kronk there on the right in the black jacket. He's the good skill person. Is having your one thing. And this is a recognition that race day is just going to be difficult. And part of the reasons why we race is not to just stay fit and enjoy the lifestyle, but to challenge ourselves at some point in time. It's not that we all just like spending hundreds of dollars or whatever your currency may be on doing events and collecting tiny medals and pictures of smiles. There's a challenge inside there, and going up against that challenge really matters. And some people call it the wall if it's a marathon. There's different names and different sports, different places to be, embracing the suck, all those pieces. At the end of the day, race day is going to be hard. And so having a clear purpose for why you're there, or a clear orientation, really helps you fight that noise, because it's not a rational conversation. It's like talking with a screaming toddler. You know, they could be like, I want the stuffed animal with the shiny eyes. And you could say like, well, it's actually like a really cheap product. It's, you know, it falls apart. Like the last one we bought, it's the toddler just screaming, I don't care, I want it. And you're like, how about I get you something else? It's like, I just want that. Like there's just really no capacity to really have that conversation when your legs and your back and your lungs and everything's like, this hurts. Make the best. It needs to stop. The easiest way to make a stop is to just have you walk right now, or get off this bike, or just pull over to the side of the road and, you know, put your head between your knees and maybe sob a little bit or something like that. It's going to be hard. And we've all been in that place. The difference is that when you have your one thing, when your body comes back and says like, hey, I've been keeping score here across the course of the day. You've been giving me this really crappy food. You've been asking me to go really fast. I'm hot. I don't like it. And, you know, part of me is about to cramp. You may have noticed that I'm sending you little cramp signals. I think a great idea to stop. you need a reason why you don't stop, right? And the reason doesn't have to be some one magical solution, but it's the thing that in that moment when your body says, hey, you can say, hold on a second, and come back to it. So we're not being forced to have a conversation at that most important inflection point, but every time it comes back and says, hey, you can say, I'm just got to get to that telephone pole and then I'll talk to you. And you get to the telephone pole and it says, hey, and you're like, oh, so sorry. Did I say that telephone pole? I meant the next telephone pole. Be right back. Hold on. And you're going to put that evil voice, the forces kind of dragging you back. You're going to put it on hold, right? And it's going to keep ringing. It's going to call. It's going to page you. Remember pagers. It's going to put up smoke signals. It's going to get your neighbor to come over and bang on the door. All those things are going to happen to try and get you to stop. And your job is to understand that, yes, it's hard. I knew it was going to be hard. I signed up. It was going to be hard. But even though it's hard, I'm going to keep going. Because the majority of people who stop are not in extreme medical distress. Oh, so nice, that's the case. They're not injured. They're not completely out of energy. They've lost that willpower to keep going, right? And so it's a moment of truth that you see on the side of that race course when that athlete has to reconcile sort of their ability to keep going with what they believe they can do. And we want the one thing to make sure that that belief is stronger than ability, because at some point in time in those longer races, we need to tip the scales in our favor and turn this belief into a tool that we use to create conditions for success, rather than succumbing to the thought processes of our quads, which are really, ultimately a part of what we use to go around the course, but they really shouldn't be the decision-making criteria for what success is. All right. Okay, awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the pre-work here. We've talked about the 4 keys. We've got about 20 minutes left, so I want to be really dialed in on this so we can be specific. And Matt, I'm going to ask you for some help as we go through this as well. But one of the things that I do want to bring out here, just very quickly, is that we're not suggesting that you just show up on race day and say execution, not fitness, and you're like, oh my god, I'm so much faster, right? And then you say the line. Hey, let's go to the line, everybody. And like, life is great. Like, not at all. Like, this is a framework you need to use. It's also something that you need to practice. So as you go across the course of your day, in your block, that 12-week block kind of getting into your race is really what's setting you up for success on the day. So we've got a series of steps that we take inside the team with our athletes, regardless of discipline, focused on their big race of the season that allow them to check off important incremental milestones so that as they approach race day, they're learning and practicing along the way, each skill adding on to the next, so that when they show up on race day, they have a very clear understanding of where they are, right? And then we can help them define where they are on the map. But if people who show up and say they know they want to be at this race, but they really don't understand their fitness, or they don't understand their nutrition, or they don't know anything about their pacing, it's really hard to determine just how far those 2 points are on race day. If you don't know where you are, but you know where you want to be, it's hard to measure that gap, because if you don't know where you are. So that's the process of what we go through here inside the team over the course of these 12 weeks. And that's what we're going to share with you right now as we go through this. And it's what you'll also be getting as we go into our resource area that we'll be sending you later. Okay, awesome. So the first thing we do is we take off our shirts and we shave our heads and we go outside on the hottest road you can. No, all right, I'm just kidding. I thought we could do that. I don't know, Matt, you might actually qualify for this one, right? I don't know. Let's do a gut check, hair check. Oh, there you go. Yep. I definitely need to see a barber. So, all right. So the sweat test, right? So about 12 weeks out from race day, we do this with our athletes. And this is actually a really important part of the process. So we have them do a set interval based on their key sport for their race, where we have them measure themselves pre and post. They're going to be at a set interval and set pacing. We plan out what they're going to be eating and drinking, so we can do the math. We can take their pre-state, we can take their post-state, and we can reconcile that with the fluids and food that they've consumed during that duration. Ideally, it's a race effort. Because it's an endurance race we're training for, your race effort is oftentimes your just steady state effort, right? So it doesn't have to be an extreme test, but what it is effectively is measuring how your body functions nutritionally, like a hydration perspective, calorie perspective, functionally under the duress of the race effort that you expect to have on the day. And this is really important, because what allows us to do is say, you may say, I like to drink a bottle an hour of what I want to do when I train, because I just love drinking a bottle an hour. Makes sense. A 3-hour ride, 3 bottles, super easy. I've got 3 cages on my bike, or my Camelback holds 3 bottles in it, so I'm great. Life is good, right? 3 bottles, 1 per hour. And then you do the test, and people come out of the test and say, hey, I just realized that I lost 24 ounces, which is a bottle and a half per hour. That's weird. Like, I'm a bottle and a half hour kind of guy. What do I need a bottle, like a bottle an hour kind of guy? I don't need a bottle and a half, but the math shows you need a bottle and a half, that you're losing that much fluid. So when we give you the solution table, you'll see in the resources, we want you to start with your, hydration plan first to know what it is you need fluid wise, which in this case is making sure that we're replacing as much of the fluid as we can as possible, given the speed, duration, and conditions of your event. Obviously, if you're doing like a world record half marathon, you can't drink a ton of fluid, but we can prepare you for it. And then basically, once we've addressed your hydration needs, we can take a look at your lean body mass and say, okay, what are you getting in from your fluid choices? And then reconcile the difference with solid choices. In other words, solving your hydration plan takes time in terms of understanding where you are, and that may evolve over the course of those 12 weeks, but also practicing it, because going from a 1 bottle an hour kind of person to a bottle and a half hour kind of person is a lot. Now I've got to consume that bottle in 40 minutes, not in 1 hour. And that's a different undertaking altogether. It's going to take several weeks of you focusing on that to get better, which I think is really important. So number 1 in the progression, sweat test. And we do that regardless of your discipline, okay? The second one up, Matt, I'll let you talk through this one. Our course recon option. What do we do with the course recon?
Yeah, so the course recon is really either going through research with maps or the weather, and then also viewing race reports. So one of the benefits of the Endurance Nation community is that we have a lot of athletes that have done a lot of different kinds of races. And they typically, part of our protocol is for you to write a race plan and then a race report. So you talk about what you're going to do. And then after it happens, you talk about what you did and how it worked out for you. And really, you can learn a ton from reading other people's race reports because these are other age group athletes that deal with the same kind of dynamics that, they're not like superhuman, Lucy Charles Barkley or Jan Frodeno's that are just, different planet athletes. These are other age group athletes. And they'll tell you, how many bottles they carried and how they figured that out and what problems they were solving. And you realize that like there's a lot of athletes also problem solving the same things that you are. So you can learn through those. And then during the research with through maps, Google Maps is certainly super helpful now because you can look at a lot of the road surfaces, road conditions. You can look at terrain. You can look at where your line is going to be, and you can look at what the terrain's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. You can get grade. So you can get a lot of information just from looking at the maps and then doing the recon via mapping technology, and then also understanding the conditions. You can understand how the conditions are going to, with like epic ride weather, you can know how the weather is going to change across the day. Like if you're doing Ironman Florida, the wind will shift depending on which way you're going during the day. As the land mass heats up, certainly with Kona, the wind shifts. So you get an idea of like this part will be with the wind, this part will be wet into the wind, just so you can manage your effort and kind of manage your expectations throughout the day and stuff like that. So
totally. Yeah, exactly. Like if you're just using the map on the race website to help you plan for the day, doing it wrong. Like there's a million pieces of data out there. Other people are doing this event. They've posted it to Strava. Your teammates might have done it. You can go search it up. Just use Google, search it, and find what other people have done. Like really take their stories that they maybe written a race report or a note in Strava, or their data if you're able to get in there, and just compare like that athlete's experience to what you know of the course and your experience, because you'll start to parse out over time. Like you may have thought this part of the course was difficult, but it's clear that the 3 data pieces that you've seen from 3 different athletes, or the stories you've gotten from people, is that actually like mile 80 say of the bike ride is really challenging, and it wouldn't appear that way at first glance. And the course recon really helps you do that. It helps you break down those elements and identify what are the most important parts of your training, so we can start to factor that in. So if you're doing a 3-hour ride, but you live in super flat Florida, for example, but we know that you're doing a course that has decision points at mile 20 or in mile 40, so those are 1 hour and 2 hours into your ride, we can mimic that. We can use your power meter. We can challenge you, whether indoors or outside, to do a hard effort at an hour of your bike ride for 15 minutes to recreate that hill. Be really strategic to start training your body, and ultimately prepare you better for the race by being really specific in terms of what you're doing. Okay. All right. Next up, we have here the benchmarking test. The benchmarking test is actually an important part and actually relatively new inside Endurance Nation. And this is a chance where we can actually like put your work into practice. And honestly, Matt, I'm going to lean on you again here a little bit to kind of talk about it, because we have benchmarking for Ironman at 70.3 in terms of how we want you to actually go out and put the work into place. So it's different than a race rehearsal, which we'll talk about next. This is actually more of a sort of a functional, not test, but like a reconciliation, right? Of how the numbers work.
Yeah. So I guess this is the part where I really like to tie in your point earlier from like where training is problem removal, like racing is problem solving. So it's like you spend months and months and months doing problem removal. Like I need to move my schedule around so I can get the 5-hour ride in. I need to move my schedule around so I can get to the swim. I need to move my schedule. I need to get my clothes out to make it really make it really easy for me to work out early in the morning. Like you're trying to like fit all of this stuff into your schedule. It's all about problem removal. So racing ends up being about problem solving. So as part of, and we've introduced the 4 keys to you, and there's kind of, we take you from, doing these workouts where it's X watts at Y time and develop fitness. Then we say, here's 4 keys that help you with your, smoke some peyote and you'll be able to get these 4 keys and you'll be able to put it together. So what we're doing here with the benchmarking test is we're bridging that, the training to the racing. We're bridging problem removal to problem solving. And one of those steps, along with the sweat test, along with the course recon, is the benchmarking test. So the benchmarking test is one step up from the sweat test. So now you know how much fluid you need. You know what your nutritional needs are if you're fueling, and you know what your hydration needs are. Then we have you do a limited effort at what is going to be your Ironman pacing or your race pacing of whatever event you're going to be doing, whether it's half or full or a gravel race or ultra. But this benchmarking event basically gives you a chance to match up what the effort should feel like and what numbers you should see in ideal conditions. So then you're like, aha, this gives you an idea of like how you can read the dials that you can see, like your heart rate. You can get a number for things, you can get a number for power, but you can equate that to a feeling, and that helps you dial in like what it should feel like when you're doing your the next event we'll talk about, the race rehearsal, and then your race. So what we're trying to do here is bridge that gap between training and then racing, and giving you the chance to practice driving your fitness around, making good decisions during that particular event. And you just develop some more experience than problem solving rather than problem removal. There you go.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Nailed it. Like totally. And I think, one of those elements is like understanding just how easy racing is meant to feel at the start of your race. And the benchmarking test really helps people wrestle with that earlier in the program, so they can get a sense of like, oh, this is my race effort. Because we just have this imaginary sense of like how racing should feel. And this really brings it back and allows us to sort of set expectations before we head into the race rehearsal. So the race rehearsal is basically taking that concept of the benchmarking, taking the nutrition stuff that we've talked about earlier, the sweat test, and saying, okay, well, let's put it together. If you're gonna run a marathon at a certain pace, or you're gonna run a race an Ironman, or do 140-mile gravel race, it's gonna take you 8 hours. What's our race rehearsal? And in this case, this involves all the things, all the food, all the equipment, all of the gear, and you're going to go out and basically recreate your race day, but in your own environment. So it means getting up early, having breakfast. It means resting the day before. It means going through that exercise of making sure everything works. Because honestly, things aren't going to work. Even for more experienced athletes, the first race rehearsal of a race build is always sort of a come to Jesus moment where you're like, I thought I had it down, then I don't. And it's that response that triggers people to go back and read their old data, to rethink what they're doing, to get up to speed with where they are right now. We do 2 race rehearsals for most people in most programs. Sometimes that changes depending on the fatigue that you're carrying and other challenges within your race cycle. But ideally, you get 2 shots at this to practice what you want to do. One, where we eliminate a ton of mistakes. And it's generally those race conditions, just so you know, this is on flat sections, right? So if you're doing a really hilly ultra, this isn't about going out and finding some hilly space. This is practicing in the safest and simplest conditions possible. Can I hold this effort? Can I maintain my speed? can I take in this nutrition and be successful? Am I in still control of my faculties? Like, can I, if you're an Ironman, get off this bike at this effort and then run? What does that look like? And we give you guidance and parameters for that to practice it. So the idea being that by the time you get to this race, not only have you completed these other milestones, but you've also gone out and effectively done sort of 2 practice versions of it. So on race day, there's very few surprises because you know exactly what you need on your bike for it to work. You know what to wear and why you like, these shorts over those shorts. You know what to eat in hour 2 because after twice going through it, hour 2 didn't work for you. You're able to make an adjustment so you're that much further ahead. So we're getting rid of all the small problems that will inevitably pop up on race day by going through this process. Right? And then here we go. Last but not least, is this race plan. And Matt alluded to it earlier, which is, once you've kind of gone through this whole process and you've had a reconciliation of fitness and you know what the event is, then we write our race plan. And you'll get a sample race plan in the downloads and a really comprehensive look at how detailed you can be. And this is sort of a really narrative and sort of detailed story about your day, what you're going to do in the day before, what you're going to do the morning of, what you're going to do as you wait in the corral, what you're going to do. Like really, the more granular you can be is really correlated with a higher chance of success. We talk about, my kids were younger and we talked about, hey, sometimes you may need to call 911 if something goes wrong. You can't just say to someone, call 911 when something goes wrong, because people just, when something goes wrong, they're looking at that thing that's wrong. It doesn't make sense. It's wrong. Why is it wrong? It's not supposed to be wrong. And they're not calling 911. So you actually have to have people pick up the phone and press 911. Like when I say call 911, you pick this up and you dial 911, right? And this race plan effectively allows you to do that. When you have to make a decision or you have to follow a step, what do I do in this situation? I remember I wrote this all down. It's part of this. I'm in chapter 7 of my 8-chapter story. And I know what I need to do now because I had it written down. I had to look at it. I had to rewrite it and go through it. Much like an author creating a book, you're telling your story of your race before you get there. Once again, that is a massive advantage, even for people who skip through the early parts of the training. They have an injury, or they have a problem, or they sign up late. We get a lot of people signing up last couple of weeks before a race. This plan exercise allows them to make the best possible decisions moving forward. And we really encourage you to do it. We've got race plans, over 1,000 race plans from all sorts of events across the years. I mean, it's a real resource for the community to go back and be effectively in the shoes, All right, so what we have here, and we'll do Q&A if people want to put some questions inside the chat. I don't know if you're able to get inside the chat and say stuff. Oh, I see Tom asking about Rob's new bike. It's possible that's Rob's new bike for sure. But what we're trying to give you here is this decision-making mindset, right? So understanding that race day is going to be a problem and we're solving problems on race day, but also giving you a sense of how do I address these problems. So we'll give it to you in the beginning of your sort of 12-week block as problems that will come up through training. We've given you ideas of how you can step sequentially from starting the block to doing your sweat test to working through to benchmarking to getting to race rehearsal to actually get to race planning. All of that process there baked into our training plans allows you to move closer and closer and closer to what it means to be at your personal best. The idea here is that we're creating a process and we're putting you into that process. And the more clear your steps are, the easier it is for you to make decisions. And we can really reduce the emotional side of the day until it really matters. Emotion is super powerful. Much like my ridiculously oversized coffee from Starbucks, it can give me a super boost on the day when I need it. But there's also a crash afterwards. And if you're racing just on emotion or you're racing only on willpower, that is not going to last for your entire day. The stories we tell afterwards sometimes are edited, or perhaps we humans, anthropomorphize everything and sort of say, oh, I could see the epic journey you were on, which really was just a series of, small errors and clumsy mistakes and problems that should have been solved easier, but it sounds like an epic day, right? Oh my goodness. Instead, we want to give you a position of strength ahead of time by giving you physical and mental opportunities to take incremental steps forward each year to be better. And the 4 keys framework is part of that. Okay, so go ahead and put some questions inside the chat. I'll go back up to the 4 keys here just to show that slide so you do know as a reminder. It's race days about execution, not fitness. Nothing matters until the line where the race gets hard. We get to the line by racing inside our box, focusing on the things we can control, ignoring the competition until we want to see them, right? When things get hard at the line, we want to find those competitors and now we want to latch onto them and try and get in front of them. We're going to use them as carrots. We're not going to use them inappropriately earlier in the day as distractions or things that take us away from what we're trying to achieve. And then finally, at the end of the day, having that one thing for those critical moments when your body pushes back or your mind says, you know what, like that aid station looks like it's full of amazing people and we should just go meet some of them and talk to them. We need to have a reason why we don't stop in that moment, where we can keep going. Because once you get past that moment, keeping going isn't hard. You just have to keep doing what you're doing. But it's getting past those critical inflection points are the one thing that makes a big difference for us as well, for sure. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now, which is totally fine. So what I'll do is I'll skip ahead because we're getting close to our hour. So you have everything that you need. I'll come down here to the final notes. Okay, so we've got those resources coming soon. As a reminder, if you didn't sign up for this event, you need to put your email address in here so we can send it to you. I can't find you, despite what you may think about your government, wherever you live, and the all-knowing spy capacities. We don't have that inside Endurance Nation, so you have to go to endurancenation.us/bootcamp, enter your email address. We'll send you this recording. We'll also send you all of the resources, the sponsored deals, etc., as you go forward. As I mentioned earlier, we're starting our 2024 season. It starts on October 29th. It's known as the Out Season, which is our winter program. All of our athletes come together, regardless of sport, train together for a 14-week block. It's really powerful. It's very effective. Starting in November sounds early, right? Like, oh my God, but what it does is it gives you momentum through Thanksgiving, gives you momentum through December and the holidays that follow, and allows you to enter February effectively, which is the end of your 14-week block, with great fitness, huge momentum, and then sort of a land of opportunity in the remainder of your year. Most athletes don't do that at all. They kind of just get on some basic program. They have ups and downs. Things aren't so great. They don't have a schedule, so they're not following anything. They get to February and they say, I think I'm going to sign up for a race and do something. You already have last year's fitness that you've achieved strategically using our high return on investment protocols with lots of work, but also lots of rest. And now we can go forward into springtime and say, how do I want to get stronger? It's a recipe we've built since 2007. It allows you to maintain a reasonable schedule over the winter, but build great fitness, make new friends, stay accountable, all the good stuff inside community, and advantages you going forward. Those of you on this channel right now who've been with us for years, some of you have been with us since 2007. Some of you live here in the States, others live abroad. You come to our training camps, you know that the mindset and lifestyle of Endurance Nation is high expectations for our individual selves, understanding that the best way to get to achieve those expectations is by working with a group of people who embody the principles that help us be successful, that live that lifestyle. And then every year finding that trick, that path to going forward, whether it's a specific training block, a different type of workout, maybe trying a different type of racing, whatever it may be. You've got the coaches inside the community, Matt and myself as your primary guides to make sure that you stay on track. If you're interested in tapping into that, again, endurancenation.us/apply. You can get in, and if you get in before we start the out season this year, Matt and I will take a look at one of your race files. We'll go ahead, if you sign up, we'll go ahead and take one of those race files from your Strava or wherever you keep it, and we'll break it down for you in video form so you can actually get our expert input on what you could change going into next year, which I think could be very helpful. I mentioned camps earlier, but if you like camps as well, this year we're doing Mallorca and Tuscany in 2024. You can find those at endurancenation.us/camps. All right. Outstanding. So with that said, I'm going to go back to Matt. Matt, hey, any last thoughts for the folks at home? This has been awesome. Thanks, Rich.
That sounds great. You should sign me up. I'm in.
Hey, I was thinking about it this morning. I haven't even signed up for a race for next year. I've got to get my own act together. I've just been focused on getting day to day to get to this point so I could do this presentation. But what's on your radar for the folks at home? What are you thinking of for next year?
What's your big thing? I am also in the market for a race. So anybody that has a great race, you want to send it to me. But I'm going to spend this fall then just building the fitness machine, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to execute in the spring. So I know that I'm going to want to do something. I haven't decided what that is yet, but I know I'm going to need the fitness to do it. And the one way to get there is commercial, TM, trademark, out season. But yeah, it's definitely it. Doing that work will set me up for whatever I'm going to decide to do. So, so that's where I'm headed, I guess, so far.
I hear you. I'm looking forward to. I've already started doing some racing back on Zwift. I'm looking forward to the community side, like meeting on the weekends and meeting on Friday Freight Train, doing the hang-on ride. Getting a chance to kind of be together. I love how the energy gets in there. Some people are run streaking, other people are doing the bike focus programs. It's a real opportunity to grow and test your limits. And I think the 3 phases of the out season, so you move through like threshold, VO2, and our different benchmarking tests across the course of the 14 weeks really challenges people. Like those last 4 weeks of the out season, no joke, for sure. We start off with Monday and Friday as rest days, and people say, I want to put all this extra stuff on my rest days. And by week 10, they're like, sweet baby Jesus, can I please have another rest
Every
day?
year,
Like,
it's
just
oh, can I want to do
please.
extra swimming. Can I go extra swimming? Yes, you can do extra swimming,
Yes.
but know that this
Yes.
will happen.
Exactly.
Nice
CrossFit. I want to
swimming.
do CrossFit. Yes. I'm going to wear a
Right.
weighted vest. Yes. I'm doing these Wim Hof breathing exercises, all these
Yeah.
things, by week 8, they're like just crying softly.
Invest in the
So
rest.
that's what
Yes,
those are
that's for
changes.
sure.
100%. So we'll navigate you through that. But again, we'll be sending this to people. Follow up through email again, endurancenation.us/bootcamp. Put your email in there. Tell your friends to put their email in there. We'll send them everything. It includes sponsor discounts, all the frameworks we have here, all the special sauce that we use. Great resources for everyone. I want to thank people for signing up for today and talking through this. And if you know someone who would benefit from not only our mindset, but the community that we built here and the resources we've talked about, please send on Endurance Nation. We would really appreciate it. We've got a great community here. As I mentioned, some people have been here for 17 years and running as members, and others are just showing up today, but everyone gets to benefit from that great experience. It's a lot of fun, and there's nothing like getting better with a team. I really enjoy that part of it. It's something about personal excellence, but it's not as much fun when you don't have someone there kind of celebrate that with, and that's what the team is for me. So speaking of which, Matt, we can celebrate now. We can turn off the live stream and go to the part where we party down. The piñatas lower from the sky, and we take our massage sticks and we beat them and unleash all of the candy that we tell everyone else not to eat, because we secretly eat all that candy here behind the scenes. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm going to end this stream and we'll be in touch. Take care, everybody.